Hello, Tangerine. Welcome. This week we are looking at Back for Blood. We are in the beta, and this week we are joined by our good friend for the podcast, Wrestling Matt. Is it still Wrestling Matt?
It's either Space Hulk, the greatest game ever made,
Right.
Deathwing Matt,
Okay.
or Space Marine, or Warhammer Matt, or just Matt.
Right. This is
I like Warhammer, Matt.
so Back
Yeah, it
for
makes it
Blood.
sound menacing.
Yeah.
It's got a deck building system. What do you think of the deck building system in Back for Blood?
Yeah. So I was so skeptical about it. I, I I go back and forth between deck building games. Like some are good, some are bad. I didn't know
Not
about
everything needs deck building.
True.
Yeah.
True.
And I think like
Unless
I
it's
was
Slayer's Spark.
skeptical about it because I know you're a big fan. So you were saying it was good, but I was like, I don't know if I'll like it. But I thought it was really refreshing. Just because it makes each individual player feel different, and there's different strategies behind it.
Yeah, because you went for more of like a medic build, and I went more
Yeah.
for like a stamina build, and our friend Vietnam Dave went for the greed build where he got copper. And
Yeah.
that's just an example of like different builds. So like I really valued stamina because it allowed you to get away from zombies and get into better positions and stuff like that. Whereas you were like, it was useful to have a medic because then you could have someone to give all the meds to, and you got better heals. Right, there was like a unique perk in the deck with like the EMS stuff where it had positives and negatives.
Yeah, I think like some of the better skills had that curve as well. So I think every deck on the supply drop, and I think you're just popping into that now.
The supply lines, yeah.
Yeah, like the better cards always had like a very good ability, but a negative to them. So you sort of had to balance your deck around what style you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's the
I
big
liked
thing.
it.
The big thing about the supply line, as you see there, you basically, as you progress through the game, you get points called supply points, and then you go back to your camp and use that to buy cosmetics and new cards for your deck. And I think that was one thing that Left 4 Dead was missing was, of course, it was fun to play like Left 4 Dead with your friends like me and my friend Vietnam Dave. We played Left 4 Dead a lot on the higher difficulties, and we played online just because we loved the game, but like...
Didn't you play mods of it as well?
Yeah, we had like tons of add-ons that just like
Shrek.
We had like Shrek as the tank, Thomas the Tank Engine as the tank, or like Dave had a couple of mods that kept crashing the game where it replaced all the special infected with just tons more normal infected, where it became more like World War Z. And I think like World War Z is a great example of like what a Left 4 Dead game may look like in modern day, where like initially like I think a lot of people are skeptical on it because it was based on the film version. I think that the film got mixed reviews. I don't know, like the Brad Pitt one, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, so I can't.
It had like dumb payoff at the end, but like I think it like looked cool. I guess.
But
like stacking zombies.
I saw like the reviews for World War Z, and I looked at it and I was like, actually, this people are saying this is really good, and it does look really interesting having the huge horde of zombies. But I feel like that was such an underrated game that went under the radar because it was like an Epic exclusive, and it was like the mega Epic exclusive, where it was set up in a way where it was always meant to be exclusive to Epic. They had that weird contract where some games had like a year exclusivity, but then it was listed as an always Epic exclusive, and it is coming to Steam now in a couple of months where they're re-releasing it under a different like name sort of thing, with first person and a new class. That's a really freaking cool game. And I remember playing that with like Matt here, Vietnam Dame, saying this is what we would imagine a modern day Left 4 Dead game would look like, sort of thing. And but now we actually get to see that in Turtle Rock Studios, the original devs of Left 4 Dead 1, in Back 4 Blood. Another interesting to point out, people say like Left 4 Dead 2 was like the pinnacle of Left 4 Dead. I think that's when it really hit its stride. But a lot of people don't know this, is like Turtle Rock, it was mostly Valve working on 2. Turtle Rock was 1. At that point it was mostly Valve on 2. I think Turtle Rock had a lot less influence on 2. So it is interesting to say that now, because people are touting, Turtle Rock as, oh my god, they made Left 4 Dead 2 and that game's amazing. It's like, yeah, they helped in it, but there was still a lot of like Valve in that as well. So
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
I just the thing I loved about World War Z was it was like such a pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah.
Because whenever there's like a movie title, you're always like, oh, it's another
Yeah.
like it's
'cause
another
the
money
logo
grab.
was
Yeah.
like the film, or was like, is it the same as the book? Like, does the film and the book have the same
I think
iconography?
I don't know. I think that it's based on the film World War Z because there is a book of World War Z which I also haven't read.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not
I
sure.
don't read.
I think for me, like
read.
when I first saw the zombie hordes come, I remember my immediate reaction was, oh, like,
this is
oh god,
shit. This is
what
cool.
is coming my way? And
Yeah.
it
Big
what
Hordes
I like,
was a huge strength in that game.
and what I like about this game is, like, say for example, you set off a crow, which I think you have footage of.
Yeah.
The hordes feel dangerous. The mission when you're on the you're loading the howitzer, and you're like, it's endless. You feel
you want the horde to feel scary, right? Not
well, that's the thing. Like
zombies.
the special infected in this game are very different. You do have like a boomer character. You have like a charger-ish character where it kind of crushes you. But that was one of the big complaints I saw from Left 4 Dead fans was in Left 4 Dead you have the boomer character, right? And the boomer character, as soon as you see it, you can blow it up from afar, and it's got very little health. But if it gets too close to you, it'll do massive devastating damage. The problem with the boomer sort of character in this game was that all of the special infected are really fucking tanky. So it almost feels like you don't have tactical ways to play around specific infected. They all kind of feel samey, where they all become bullet spongy, and you have to like just dump bullets as soon as you see any infected sort of thing, which was like one of the criticisms I saw, which I do agree with, sort of thing. But yeah.
I disagree with it to a level. Like, so I would agree with it on the lower difficulties, but on the harder difficulties, once we got into our rhythm, I actually had so much fun.
Yeah. I think like playing this game on the normal difficulty is a completely different game to playing it on like the next difficulty up. I think it's called it's either called like Veteran or something like that. I can't
Survivor or
Survivor,
like that, yeah.
Can you sort of like balance it like I feel like so you're saying like the more health made it harder, like you needed that to like keep the
the big difference was like playing it on the normal difficulty. The change from normal difficulty to the harder difficulty, initially it doesn't seem that big because it just goes, oh, there's more team damage on the high difficulty. It goes 35% team damage, but then you don't realize it's actually removing the buffs you get from playing on the normal mode. So on the normal mode, you get more med kits. On the normal mode, you get like the zombies deal less damage and you deal more damage to them, sort of thing.
And you don't suffer trauma damage as well.
Yeah, you don't suffer. I think you maybe still suffer trauma damage, or you maybe don't suffer as much trauma damage.
Well, what's the trauma damage?
So I like to call it grey health, but essentially, trauma is permanent damage over time. So when you heal up your health bar. But when you have
like rad damage in like Fallout.
Yes, yeah, that's a good example to compare it to.
So it lowers your maximum health.
It lowers your maximum health trauma damage, and that gets increased in the higher difficulties. And the only way the only way to heal the only way to heal trauma damage is through the use of a med kit, and that becomes really big when you don't get the free med kits. You only get one free med kit on the medium difficulty. You then have to start paying for stuff. I don't know if I explained this yet, but throughout the level, you're constantly collecting what's called copper. And at the start of every level, you have what's like a CSGO buy system, where you use this copper to buy upgrades. You buy team upgrade cards, you buy attachments for your guns, you buy equipment, sort of thing. And that's when it gets really interesting. Do you need to buy this heal in order to get rid of this trauma damage and make it through? Or do you save up enough money so you can buy a team upgrade so your entire team gets more stamina, or your entire team can hold another grenade, or your entire team can hold another med kit?
That's a risk reward on like resource costs. Yeah, that's cool.
And I think like with Left 4 Dead, every single level was almost its own entity. Of course, it had like the campaign move from one level to level, but like on Back 4 Blood, like from level 1 to the finale, it's almost like a roguelike run. It's almost like a roguelike deck builder almost. It's so weird that like
roguelike FPS deck builder.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. It is a really interesting game.
And and I think like with the harder difficulties as well is because you're being punished more. There's stuff that you just generally think about more. So for example, with the special zombies, they have weak spots on them. So if you target them, you're going to do more damage to them. So when we were going through the runs, there was one area that screwed us up several times. It was in this swamp.
Yeah.
And there's crows there. So on the harder difficulties, you've got this big charging zombie coming at you while you're trying to avoid crows, which they spawn more of, it seemed. I can't confirm that, but it seemed like there was a lot more crows in harder difficulties. If you trigger, then summon a bunch of zombies plus specials that are chasing you down. It's all like in like what I found in the harder difficulties is you're trying to position yourself more around the boss where it will aggro onto someone and you want to try and hit the sweet spots on them, whether that's high, low, or to the side,
how quickly crows. Can you take an enemy down by attacking the weak spot compared to like normally hitting them?
It does a lot more damage on the weak spot. And here you get to see one of the bosses of the game. There's an ogre in this game as well, so you can have the Shrek mod.
Cool. Shrek. That's really cool. Okay, I will say I like big enemies that actually like have weak points.
This is me playing with like bots on the easy difficulty, which is why we're just shredding through him. As soon as we came across this guy on like the medium difficulty, holy shit, is this guy hard to take out? Like that's what I was saying. Like they're completely different games playing different difficulties.
And I think that's what I like about the game is it's similar to Left 4 Dead but different in the same way as like World War Z is similar enough where the premise is you're killing zombies.
Yeah.
But it changes. And I think that's what it needed for like a new game in 2021.
Yeah, you can't just copy the whole template, can you?
I mean,
well, you know what? Like playing on the harder difficulties, it was like we had to work so well as a team, and we were making call-outs, and it was a lot more stealthy. It actually reminds me of a game we tried to play once, but I think we didn't take too seriously. We tried the game GTFO? It was actually made by the original Payday developers, and that's like a very hardcore co-op FPS game where you're trying to sneak through like these tunnels filled with aliens. And if you set off the horde, then you get massively attacked, and you get.
Didn't you not like that game?
Yes, but at the time we were playing with a very drunk Vietnam dame who just kept running in and immediately setting them off. And I think that may have like changed my experience of the game.
Right. Okay.
So I'd be interested to try that one again. Here's me opening Here's me not knowing what to do and opening an alarmed door again. Another way you can alert the horde.
And that was one of the things where it was like even like the loadouts that we were doing on the harder difficulties were solely focused on so you'll get locked doors you can only open with a toolkit, for example. And so
that takes up your utility slot, which is also the same slot as the defib, which is really useful.
Yeah, especially in the harder difficulties. So you're trying to balance it out, and we came to the conclusion of I think it was 2 defibs, 1 toolkit, and an ammo pouch.
Yeah, that was a good. So you can see here on the easy difficulty, you get 3 free charges, which feels insane when you've played on the higher difficulties. Rather than just the 1, and then every time somebody heals, the cost increases.
And I like the one thing I actually really like about this game is the big dynamic events feel big. So like that ogre back then felt big. Otherwise, like on Left 4 Dead,
that's a scripted sequence that happens always, sort of thing. One of the complaints that I saw from other people was that people said that the game kind of needs more of a director system, like they had in Left 4 Dead, where it seems like there's a lot of scripted stuff that always happens, rather than it being like the horde gets bigger or smaller based on how well you're doing, like it was in Left 4 Dead, which was like one of the best systems of the game. Which I would like to see more of that stuff. You love to see Shrek. He's a lovely lad.
Like I mean, it'll be interesting to see because I mean, like in retrospect, people are talking about a completed Left 4 Dead, whereas we played it in the beta. So whether they're going to implement it or not. will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But I felt like the scripted events felt bigger. So like blowing up the dam was just a really cool experience where you're actually having to carry the cartridges in, unloading the cannon, and you're
Look, I'm playing on easy mode. Look how many shots it took to kill the boomer unit, basically.
And there's one of the wretches as well just then, I think. And he like darts around and stuff. But
yeah, I think this game is really fun.
Impressed. Yeah,
I think this game's really fun. It looks really good. It plays really, good, like the gunplay and stuff. But I do think there is some stuff definitely to polish. It was a lot better than the first beta I saw, I think.
Yeah.
But the only thing I will say about this game before we talk about sort of the versus mode, unless there's anything else you want to talk about the main campaign mode, is the fact that I think the game itself looks really good. I would be on board. I'm just a little bit worried about the Warner Brothers publishing and there being like multiple versions of the game for pre-order, going up to like how expensive is the most? I'll pull up the page. £90.
Yeah.
There's a £90 version of the game, and I think there is like characters that are going to be coming to like as paid content, which worries me because characters aren't just pure cosmetics like they were in Left 4 Dead. Characters are actually like different classes in the game that have different abilities.
Have different stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a little worrying. I think the game
if they add is the problem that they're adding the characters like right from the start, not like, or is it the problem like just in general that they're like if they worked on like?
I think the problem is that some people are going to have different content from others based on paying DLC, which is never a good thing to like split up players' experience.
But sure, it doesn't like lock off like a whole experience. They just like changes up the experience though.
But they've already planned of cutting out content from the game and adding it in.
It's a problem. Like it's cutting out more than like they're adding new stuff later.
I think it's like more of a mod argument of.
When I buy the game, I would like to buy the whole game, not buy half. Because
I agree. I still agree with Toll Biscuits. Like you can like add stuff afterwards, but like when you haven't released the game yet, like everything you worked on to that point should be in that release.
Yeah. I think like it's a difficult thing because I know like one of the games I really like, Vermintide does it.
Another great co-op shooter game.
Yeah, and it's like essentially I think they've added 4 extra characters. So that's about I think it's about 20% of all the.
They added the new like class lines for the existing characters, right? Yeah.
And I just think it's jammy to do that. I think
that's the thing with like
business.
See, because like you know how like scummy Fat Shark has been when it comes to the microtransaction stuff. So that sort of worries me when I see another great co-op FPS.
Because Warner Brothers is one of the worst when it comes to scummy business practices.
Well, they famously got in trouble for the Shadow of War single player microtransactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So and
they're the ones that patented the what was the system called?
The Nemesis system.
Yeah.
So they've done and they love, as you point out, like they love like the different versions, like the default bronze, silver, platinum, gold, sort of like multiple tiers, and they do tend to also like try and add DLC as well. So there was 2 campaigns. I think the 2 campaigns was like either the first campaign or the second campaign, and then like a campaign later down the road, and we sort of played those over and over again. Is what you had in the beta. But if they can make campaigns at that quality that good, I think like it's definitely going to be a lot of fun to play through the campaigns. The one thing you could play in the beta was the versus mode, which was a mixed bag.
Yep.
I think
mixed.
So initially we had the sad news that there would be no campaign versus mode like there was in Left 4 Dead, which is sort of a shame because that was one of my favourite ways to play versus mode. Now versus mode is basically like you take it in turns to be the infected and the survivors, and then the survivors just try and survive as long as possible, and then you have like almost a battle royale element where there's a swarm of flies that gets closer and closer, and whoever survives the longest wins that round, and it's like a best of 3, I believe.
Yeah, this mode aggravated me more than I enjoyed it.
Right.
So,
go on.
the one thing that I hope when the game is released they polish,
Yeah.
and is so we found several times that we would join as a party of 4,
Yeah,
and be against 2 people.
well,
And then
that's one thing I should mention is during the beta, I don't think we ever had a full game or a full lobby. People were just constantly leaving this. So I feel like we almost can't give our full review on this because we never actually got to truly experience the game. I think if in the full release, they're going to need to put some sort of leaver penalty on this because people were just leaving left and right. I mean, a beta's a beta.
Were they trying and just like, oh, it's not for me and leaving, or was it?
Well, we were getting like half teams, and then sometimes people would just leave halfway through when we had like a full 4v4 team.
So the thing that wound me up the most was that so they would leave and we would do our round, get to like 5 minutes or something like that. There's no AI and no players on the other team.
Oh, well, there's no like default zombies. There's no basic zombies.
So then what happens is instead of going, oh well, there's no players, end the game, it carries on until even though you have done like got to the furthest point, you will lose if an enemy team leaves because it will play out in like until the enemy team essentially wins. Otherwise, it will like if you're playing against other players, it ends when they're wiped out.
Right.
But when the other players leave, it's like a 5-minute wait, and you don't realize that at first. You're like, oh, surely it's going to end soon. It's going to end soon. 4 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay, it just doesn't end until they win. And this happened numerous times. And like
the versus mode seems like they just did it. It wasn't the first in development. It was like the campaign mode, and then they were like, all right, now let's do a versus mode.
It felt rushed, and it felt like they were trying to patch it, which is why they didn't do it on the first wave of the beta. And then when they opened it up the next weekend, it was still bugged, and I'm hoping that they've had the time to fix it because it's not like.
Well, the thing is, as well, we also don't have campaign versus, so this is the only versus mode we have.
Yeah. And the thing with the campaign versus in Left 4 Dead was it added an extra element to the campaign and replayability.
Yeah.
But now you're forcing people into another area, which, to be honest, really, even like on its baseline core, I didn't enjoy the fundamentals of it because your aim is to kill the enemy. There's no stories driven or fun moments in the story. When I remember Left 4 Dead 2, the enemy characters waited right by the escape room with a tank, a boomer, a smoker, and a grabber, just so we couldn't get in. Fun moments like that you laugh about, even though it's a cheese tactic. This, it just feels like it will get boring very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it might become a forgotten mode, basically, I think.
Yes, yeah.
I think this is going to be one of those modes where it'll probably be popular at spawn of the game. At the beginning of the game, but it'll probably become like the secondary game. It'll become the Ewok hunt of Battlefield 1.
Yeah.
That's shout out to all the people who play Ewok Hunt in Battlefield 2.
Ewok was good though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, just because not a lot of people play something doesn't mean it's not good necessarily.
Oh, okay. Right.
But the thing is, if no one's playing it, then I mean, like Heroes and Villains.
You can't judge it properly.
Nobody plays that, but that's like a fun game mode.
Yeah. I think that's the sad thing. By essentially making it its own entity, you're taking away replayability, I find. Because I'll play the campaign. I pre-ordered it. Spoiler alert. I'll play the.
We do not condone the actions of this madman.
I'll play it on a harder difficulty, and then I'll probably want to play it on versus, and I'll probably want to play it on versus on a harder difficulty. That's two times.
So here, the one guy on the invader team left, and I think that's when it went to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, and I just, yeah, I see it's like going to be one of those things a month after release. You're going to find it really hard to find a lobby that's full. And if they haven't fixed the system, no one's going to play it. Because why would you play it when you have to play a 4-minute round just to lose? Like, yeah.
I think Back 4 Blood has some issues. And I think it's one game I would say do not pre-order. I would wait for reviews to see when it comes out.
Because like the business model itself is what's going to make or break this game.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd
if you're
agree
somebody
with
who's like, I mean, if like dwindling player base is an issue, then getting in earlier might be a good thing for you, I guess. But let's talk about another game before we end, because I think we said enough about Back 4 Blood, and now we get to talk about a game me and you really loved, I think, which was MORDHAU. I've been wanting to play MORDHAU for a really long time. I think I've talked about it on the podcast. I don't know if I said it, but me and you were very big Chivalry fans.
Yep.
And I don't think there was ever a game like Chivalry until MORDHAU came out, where it was realistic medieval first-person combat. There was, of course, War of the Roses, but War of the Roses was third-person combat.
Brian Blessed.
There was a Brian Blessed DLC, which I got because it was a fucking Brian Blessed DLC, and then they shut the game down.
With no support, like their own servers.
We're going to talk about MORDHAU from the perspective of MORDHAU in 2021, because MORDHAU, when it came out in 2019, was incredibly popular, but it seems to have endured. It's been out a couple of years now, and it seems like there is a core fan base. It still has 3,000 active players on Steam, sort of thing.
I don't find that surprising though, because I find because I watch a lot of YouTube content on medieval period stuff, and they're very dedicated when they find something they like.
Yeah.
And I feel like the same, and they all play video games as well, I reckon. So why wouldn't they stick with this as well?
I mean, people who love history will love games like this. Like you have the people who love the war playing Hell Let Loose or Rising Storm, Vietnam, and
the game's after my own heart.
So you're a big fan. You're a big fan of the realistic shooters, where I find I don't really like them, but I much prefer
realistic melee.
Realistic medieval is my jam. So my big problem with the realistic shooters is so a game like Knockout City, right? The skill floor for Knockout City is really low, but the skill ceiling is really, or like Rocket League. The skill floor for Rocket League is really low, right? The skill ceiling is really high. The skill floor for MORDHAU is pretty high. The skill floor for MORDHAU is pretty high. The skill ceiling for MORDHAU is fucking infinity. There are people who are insanely good at this game. It is crazy. So that's one. You get that in a lot of realistic games. You have incredibly dedicated players. So whenever you come into these games as new players, you're the white belt. You're up against the black belts. You're basically going in there and you're getting your ass handed to you over and over and over again. And I think it's going to put a lot of new players off.
Is there a problem with maybe realistic shooting is if you make one wrong move, you're almost instantly there.
This is the point I was gonna
see as you die.
Yes. So this is the point I was gonna make.
Learn from your death.
You've actually said my point before I said it. The point I was gonna make was the reason I like. Well, no, it's good because you've seen the flaw in the medieval realistic game versus the reason I don't like the shooters is that in a realistic shooter, if you're just coming into it and you're trying to learn, someone can shoot you across the map from 300 meters away and instantly kill you. And that feels terrible. But at least in the medieval game, I get to run at somebody and swing a sword at them before they immediately kill me. That's a big difference for me.
Yeah. See, this is the bit I think I was really lucky with so I love realistic games. Hell Let Loose is probably one of my Joe knows how much I play that game. It's one of my favorite games ever created. I was lucky where
you got it a bit early, right?
Yeah, and I also found that
you know, a mentor or something.
Yeah, so it can be hit and miss.
I guess they never miss.
Sometimes you get people who just want to impersonate a German with
Yeah.
like a really bad American accent.
Right.
But I was really lucky at the start. And even recently, actually, I picked up learning how to drive a tank. There was people that were that would talk me through what I needed to do.
Yeah, that's one thing I've found with these games is there's either someone who's going to be the most toxic man you've ever met, or someone who's going to give you tips on how to play the game. And there's no one in between.
Just FYI, we support the people who try and help other players because it makes it fun for everyone, including the person.
I was fighting against a guy, and he literally typed my name in chat, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to get shit talked. And he's like, jumping actually uses a lot of stamina. You probably don't want to spam jump like that.
It uses
and I was like, oh,
stamina.
thank you. I was like, oh, thank you.
That was on the Siege Tower map. I remember that, and because I was
cool.
I was a bit hit and miss with the community because there's servers on Hell Let Loose that I go to religiously because the community is very good and they're very good at banning people.
Yeah.
So at moderating it. I don't know what it's like on this.
I was just joining. There is like official servers, and then there's like custom servers. So I guess you can have like mods and stuff on. I did see some like really egregious shit where someone was
what I was gonna say.
There was a game where there was a guy talking about some like really illegal stuff. Like,
do you remember? Like that put me in such a bad mood. Like I was like, Joe, I don't know if I can play another game.
He was talking about like paedophile sexual assault, and I was just like, oh my god, like
just like
this is not the sort of people I want to be playing a game with. Sort of thing.
Yeah. And then, but Joe was like, "Oh, there's a filter on there."
Oh, there's a great option on MORDHAU called motivational mute. So if you mute that people with the motivational mute, whenever they type something, it just types like motivational quotes to you. That is such a great feature.
I've never seen that in a game before, and I wish they did that because it takes the toxicity out, and that's what I saw that.
Back in positivity.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I was like, okay, I like this game. But that game put me in a foul mood. And then we joined another server because I was like, if we're going to play another one, I'm not playing on this server. Like, I cannot deal with these people.
Yeah.
And it was like night and day. Like, I got really happy after playing with it because that was the game that the guy was like, if you spend if you jump, it spends stamina, and people were trying to help us.
Yeah.
Because they could see we were like level 1 and 2 and just getting owned.
Yeah. Because they could have just like steamrolled you and just like had this power trip of winning, but like now we want to like make this more interesting.
I was like, because there's another. This is like Frontlines or something where this is just. There's a game mode basically where you defend and attack, and then there's a game mode where there's neutral points and you can pull and tug.
We haven't explained the game, like how you like it's all objective based, right?
Tony, I'm going to tell you something, and you'll immediately fall in love with this game. As the attackers on one map, one of the objectives is you have to go and kill the peasants as you raid the village. The objective is to kill peasants, kill the defenders have to defend the peasants. Raiding. It's great.
Yeah.
But basically,
everything's objective based.
It's just there is a team deathmatch mode, but I don't think it's as popular as the other ones.
No, I would imagine not.
And then there's the duels as well.
Yeah. So my experience, I played one duel, and my experience was I came in and the guy immediately told me to leave because I was going to get owned, and I was like, no, motivational mute, and I killed him one time, and that was my victory out of the 5 times he killed me. So I was like, I've won. But the problem actually, there's something you should know. I think new players should know this. There's certain weapons that are banned in duel mode, and I didn't know that. So all my classes were banned because like, that throwables are banned in duel mode, and it's pretty interesting to know. And also my perks were set up like Bloodlust is completely useless in duel mode because Bloodlust is a perk where if you kill someone, you immediately get healed. But in duels, the duel ends after you kill the guy, so it's like completely useless. So like, that is useful to know. But that's another thing. Like when I started playing, I just started playing the default class. I was like, let's learn how to use a spear. Let's learn how to use a cleaver and stuff. But then you start to realize how different the weapons are in this game. Like me and Matt were talking about earlier. Like I've been using the greatsword a lot. And the greatsword is really interesting because It's a two-handed weapon, and it's got great swings on it. Like cleave weapons are very big in this game because you can do what's called drags. Like the basic combat in this game, like it's not just you spam left click and that's how you swing your sword. There's stabs, there's overhead smashes, there's swings. There's parries, there's riposte, there's clashes, there's kicks, there's shields, there's
different armor as well that people use. So if you can see someone's got a cloth helmet, you want to aim for their head, but they know because they're wearing a cloth helmet, if they're good at the game, that you're going to be going for their head. So then they're trying to block you while you're going for their head, but if you get their head, it's basically a one-shot kill because they don't have armor. And like, I use the Executioner sword, which is completely the opposite because it has a blunt end, so you don't really do much damage.
Because I was talking about this, I wanted to try the Executioner sword, but it's like I do a lot of stabs, and I was like, I'd have to get used to the playstyle of not using stabs because it's got a blunt end. Whereas
that is really cool. There's those huge differences between
with like spears. That's another thing that you don't realize
because it could be really easy just to add like Star and just make all the weapons the same.
Weapons have range, so like that was one thing at the beginning. Is like I'd feel like I'd try and hit an enemy, and they would dodge it, and then they would hit me, and I'd always get hit by it. And I was like, what the hell's happening? It's like, but then you start to learn like what the range of weapons are, and you can start to know like how far you can stand near to someone when they're holding a certain weapon. And I love like every time I play a game, losing is like an opportunity to learn. Like oh, by the way, there's heavy fall damage in this game. Don't do this. Unless you take a perk called Cat, which, like, massively reduces your fall damage. But anyway, what was I saying? So you start off, you play the basic classes, and then you realise that there's actually perks in the game. And the way that... so one really cool thing about this game is, as you play the game with gold, the only thing you unlock is you basically unlock the ability to buy cosmetics. Everyone has the same base weapons, the exact same, perks. There's no locked off stuff. Everyone's on a level playing field from level 1.
Even the free classes are good.
Yeah.
Like I still use I think it's the Defender, the Shield Boy.
Shield Wall.
Yeah, because I just enjoy I enjoy it, and that's a completely free class. And then you've got one that's got like a spear. One's got a I think it's the big long sword that's not the great sword. The
punch. You can just walk in and punch people, and you can block with punches. It's great.
So yeah, it's like a lot of good, or like a lot of weapon choices, and then you start to get adventurous where you're like, oh, should I use this perk? Should I use that perk? But if I use this perk, it's 15 points.
Yeah, so that's one thing I should explain. The way you build a custom class is you have a limited amount of points, and you only have that much points to spend on gear and the perks. So every perk and piece of gear has a cost. So like a greatsword will cost like 20 points or whatever, right? Or Bloodlust will cost 15 points, which is a perk that means if you kill someone, you regen your health, right? So you'll want to like balance like, oh, do I need to wear like a helmet here? Am I gonna like take points of my helmet so I can take a better perk, or I can take a better weapon? And that's when like building your character becomes really freaking interesting. And there's even like perks that make you worse. Like there's a perk called Peasant. And the Peasant perk's really interesting, because if you take the Peasant perk, it costs a load of points, and if you take the Peasant perk, you can only use a weapon a Peasant would be able to use. So there are certain weapons that only Peasants can use, though. So there is scythes and frying pans, but only Peasants can use these weapons. So if you want to use those weapons, you have to take the Peasant perk. Which is very interesting, because I remember me and you were in a game where we had this horse guy with a scythe, and he was just destroying everyone. I was like, how the hell did you get a scythe? You have to become a peasant in order to get a scythe. So like, there's so much like build variation between like the different classes. And then sometimes I'll make a class that is like exactly the same as my class, but then I'll take like, oh, this guy on a horse is really fucking me up. So instead of taking like a greatsword, I'll take like a billhook, which is like a low damage like polearm, but it's very good for like taking out horses, because what happens when someone gets too close to you with a horse is if you get hit by damage, you flinch, so you won't be able to hit the person on the horse. But the thing with like long-range weapons like a billhook is you can do quick, short damage to him to get him off the horse or damage the horse. And there's also another perk called Butcher, and Butcher means that you'll be able to deal more damage just to mounts, like horses and stuff. So, like, you can make like anti-horse builds. You can make like anti-polearm builds. You can make like, oh, I want to be quick and nimble. I'm going to spend points and become a dwarf, and then I'm going to also take the cat perk, and I'm going to sneak like behind enemy lines as a little dwarf and take people out.
And like, you get smaller with that.
Yeah, and you said, Tony, you were like, because I remember I was streaming the game to you, and you were like, taking the dwarf perk, that must be minus points, right? Because you don't want to be a dwarf, right? But actually, being a dwarf makes you smaller, so you're harder to hit. But also,
that's true.
I think as a dwarf you move slower and you take more damage, so it has positives and negatives, sort of thing.
Right. So you're like less hitbox, but then
yeah. And then there's an opposite, which is giant, which means you have more health and take less damage, but you're slower.
No. You have more health, but I think you take more damage and you're slower.
But
like
I think like one of the interesting things as well is like different weapons have different strengths. So like a maul, for example, is very good against heavy armor, whereas like a sword isn't. And a maul can almost one-shot someone who's got heavy armor because it's essentially crushing their skull, right?
Yeah.
Is it slower than a sword?
Yeah.
And also, you don't get slices on it, like slicing. It won't be very useful. And another thing is, I forgot what I was going to say. Tank, you're bigger, so you're a bigger target for ranged weapons.
Yeah,
you're 5.5. You move at a fixed speed regardless of armor, about 70% of your normal speed. So even if you're wearing like light armor for more points, if you have tank, you'll move slower. Oh, here's us murdering peasants. As the objective. You receive 29% less damage, but you have worse healing. So you get reduced passive regen, and Bloodlust only restores 50% HP. Is like so the perks are really well thought out, sort of thing.
Yeah. Like I think as well, like the bill hook. One of the things I really like about it is it has the ability to disarm as well as dehorse.
Never turn your back on anyone, guys, by the way. This is another thing I learned from being a new player that I don't think was really explained in the tutorial. When you turn your back on someone, they get a speed buff to chase you, so you can't just run away from people. So it's really bad to turn your back on people if you can avoid it. There's a tip for new players. What were you saying, Matt?
Yeah, there's things about the tutorial that I thought was challenging, but like there's things that it just doesn't teach you, and you either have someone teach you or you learn through lots and lots of labor of love. Yeah. But I like the different weapon types and like their different strengths and weaknesses, and then also just the range mechanic. And once you get used to it, I think like it's a very intricate and well thought out game.
Oh, you can play a loot, by the way, and it does absolutely nothing, to my knowledge.
So you can get mods that allow you to play music in the game. So if you ever hear someone playing, a lute, and instruments, they've got a mod specifically to play it.
I'm just strumming along.
Yeah, it's it's a you sort of get like an adrenaline rush when you get like 3 or 4 parries.
Yeah. Oh, and you kill a bunch of guys. And, I was outnumbered. I fucking killed these guys.
I get it in Hell Let Loose, but just in a very different way. Like my rush with Hell Let Loose is when I'm playing with a good team, but that requires 49 other players to be on board with what I'm doing, or 5 people in my squad. But on this, it's like when you get like it's coming from a noob when you're like, oh man, I just parried. Oh, I did it again. I think I'm finally getting the game.
Yeah.
And you start
and then
to
you realise that's level 1.
Yeah.
On the 100-step process.
Because it's realistic as well, you're kind of learning stuff about the actual period as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. It's a game that I enjoy a lot, and I get a lot of
game. Yeah.
And
I cannot recommend this game enough. It's so fun.
Before the stream, me and Joe were sort of talking, and I was like, it's a game I can't play when I'm tired. Yeah. But I think like once you get used to like how to play it, and it becomes sort of a second nature, it's like I think you can pick it up and play it.
Yeah, I was saying like I have much more of like an open, more adaptable mindset where I'm okay like losing more if it means I'm improving and getting better at the game.
Yeah.
I also love like it was like it reminded me of old TF2 vibes where you saw a guy just walking around playing a loot and nobody attacked that guy because he wasn't fighting anyone. He was just playing his loot. Like you did have that really cool community thing where it's like, oh, you see a guy with a loot. Let's not. Oh, you see like a dwarf just walking up and he's just like spam laughing. You're like, hello, and he's like, hello.
Yeah, naked with a frying pan.
Yeah, like that. Like there is some really like cool, just genuine human moments in this game that are really cool.
Yeah, have you ever had the Mexican standoff, especially on this map, where someone salutes you and you sort of, before I learned how to emote, I would shake because I was like a level 1 character, and the tutorial doesn't teach you it, so I was just like shaking my head trying to signal to someone, please don't kill me, I come in peace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun game.
Oh, that's another thing. You can fake hits and then combo that into a real hit. And then there's also counter attacks. Like that's a big thing when you start, because at the beginning, one of the big things you do is you learn to parry, and you're like parry. You're like, this is fucking cool. But then like the good players, they will go get their attacks parried, and then the third attack, that will be a fake attack. You'll parry it, you'll miss, and then they'll hit you with a real attack, and you're like shit. That's when you really start to get to see some of the, the level 2 players.
And there's what like so there's one perk on this game. They recently patched it, but we haven't played the patch.
It came out like yesterday. As a recording.
It gives you 100% health.
I was saying I thought it was like a bit overpowered because of the fact that in these large-scale fights, obviously it's useless in duel modes because you're 1v1, but in these large-scale fights, you kill someone with 1 HP, you immediately heal your health. And if you don't understand why that's so impactful, in MORDHAU, the only way to heal is either through using a bandage, which is an item that costs points and takes up a slot, using a medic pouch, which is an item that takes up, I think, 6 points, which is a lot for equipment, and you have to go and physically hold E on it. Or you can naturally regen health, but the only way to regen health is you have to stand still for several seconds without being engaged in combat or anyone hitting you or anything. So, like, healing is, like, a really hard thing to do in MORDHAU. Like, you're incentivized to go forward. And I said, I liked the design of Bloodlust where you're incentivized to keep going forwards and attacking rather than making it more of a defensive game where you're incentivized to go back. But I just think it was so powerful that I found I was taking Bloodlust on these big open battles on most of my characters because of how strong it was.
Yeah, I was doing the same. And then you'd meet that one player that was like level 100 and something and super strong, and you'd just be like, okay, I'm gonna run away from him because I don't stand a chance, and if there's two more players around me, there's two more players around me like this, I'm dead. Like I don't stand a chance against this guy. I think me and Joe one game were double teaming this guy. We both landed some hits, so he was pretty low. And somehow he killed, I think it was me, and then he was back up to full health and killed Joe straight away.
Yeah, but then like I've been trying to do more dueling puts because I feel like in the beginning of the game, my big crutch. I feel like ranged is almost a crutch for new players because you learn so much about the game from picking the melee class and learning to block and dodge and stuff. But if you just like sit across the map with like a longbow, you're never really going to learn like the core fundamentals of the game. There is like really talented like range people, and I've seen them just
unless you want to be a ranger.
There is like people who just pop off on that stuff, but it was like when I started taking like just basic weapon, I just take like a greatsword, and then I would try perks like stun, or I would try perks like what is it called? Fury, where you get like full stamina when you kill someone. Or another interesting, like the guy telling me not to jump. There is a perk called Acrobat where it reduces the cost of jumping. So if you are someone who uses jumping is good in this game. It uses a lot of energy, but it can help you dodge attack, or crouching can help you dodge attack, or the way you swing you can this is something I'm gonna just fucking talk about MORDHAU for like an hour. But the way you start swinging your sword, if you move your mouse as you're swinging the sword closer to the animation of the swinging sword, you can get your attack faster. And that's something I didn't understand in the beginning. It was like it was like Matt. Yeah. Tell me if I'm wrong. It felt like people were attacking us faster than we attacked them. But then there's this eureka moment where you realize what they've been doing this entire time, and then you realize
the pro doesn't tell you this.
Nope.
I think it does maybe briefly, but it's not.
But not explaining how important it is.
The problem of MORDHAU is there's so many advanced mechanics that the tutorial would just be so long if they tried to explain everything to you.
I guess, but I think there is something that you could probably I think. A lot of tutorials I find don't teach you what you should be thinking about, whereas it just shows you stuff and not context.
It doesn't teach you sweeping at all. So sweeping is say for example you have a long weapon.
Dragging. It's dragging.
Yeah, you have a very long sort of radius. Imagine
Great
a spell on. Yeah, imagine a spell on Guild Wars or something where you have that visual.
I like how you're like, Tony knows Guild Wars too. This is how I do the analogy for him.
You can visually or you don't visually see it, but when you get used to it, you do it. And then so at the beginning, I was like, Joe, how's this guy hitting me? He's so far away.
But I was explaining to you that
he jumps to me.
I was like, he's hitting you with a drag. It's not until if I show you a video on Reddit of someone doing an insane drag, they'll swing, they'll dodge it, but as the swing's still going, I'm doing this in real life on my rotating chair. They'll keep swinging in a circle and they'll hit you on the end of the fucking drag. It's it's insane how good people are at this game. Watch some of the MORDHAU pros. It's so
they probably know a little bit of real life sword martial arts or pole on martial arts.
Are you saying they're like that guy who chops up water bottles in his garden with a sword? That's
no.
Okay.
No, I know someone who actually understands stances and guards and things.
Okay. The thing that I find interesting, seeing as you're actually on the longbow, is that I hate it, but I love it at the same time. It's like a Marmite relationship, where to be an archer, as a sniper on, say for example, Battlefield or Call of Duty, basically you're guaranteed to kill someone if you hit them either in the body or the head, and that's quite a big window that you can do it on this game. As an archer, if you're not good, you just tickle people.
And the thing is, it's not like bullets. They can actually, if they have right timing, they can actually parry your ranged attacks. They can block the arrows.
Yeah, and then armor as well is very big as well, because if they've got heavy armor, your arrows aren't going to go through them, and so a headshot might not necessarily kill someone, but if you see another archer, it's basically a guaranteed kill, because they're wearing light armor, but they're also trying to kill you and wiggle around, and you have to take into account the drawstring and then releasing it. But if you hold it too long, then your arms start to fatigue and you shake, and then your accuracy goes off. So it's as an archer, there's so many things that you have to balance out, and it's very easy to be a mediocre archer and very hard to be a good archer, is what I found in the game. Of as an archer,
train.
I as an archer, I've tried. I don't really play it much, but I want to get into it more. You're just tickling people. You're not really doing much until you know what you're doing, and I don't. Yeah. So
we've been talking about MORDHAU for half an hour because I've run out of footage. So I know MORDHAU's a really fucking good game.
Yeah, I think that the fact we talked about it for half an hour.
Wait, no, I want to stall more. Actually, let's talk about MORDHAU more. We're talking about games with like high skill ceilings to get in, it's hard to get new players to come into. I just wanted to get your thoughts quickly on one thing Battlefield 5 did. Battlefield 5 is not a realistic shooter, but it's more realistic than some shooters, right?
It's authentic,
Call of
not
Duty.
realistic, what people
Yeah.
say, right?
One thing they did was the time to kill in that game was quite low, right?
Yeah.
And when they did their big content update, they increased the time to kill. So when all the new players were coming in, one thing they did was they made it so people died a lot, not as quick. And that I think that helped new players a lot. I know a lot of the hardcore players complained about this because they're like, "Oh, they're just changing the time to kill to help the noobs." But that is something interesting you can do to like try and balance your game to help new players. Is stuff like increase the time to kill to help newer players get more adjusted. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you disagree with the fundamental idea of that?
So, with the Battlefield reference, I disagree with it because I feel like Battlefield fans are like it's the most realistic shooter when we know
it's
that
definitely
it's
not.
good.
I mean, I like Battlefield and I don't like realistic shooters. So
Yeah,
there's definitely something
you don't
there.
like Hell. Yeah, you don't like Hell Let Loose, which is a realistic shooter. Like if you get shot in the leg in Hell Let Loose, your movement speed goes down, and then when you're suppressed as well, your vision goes blurry. On Battlefield, I have none of that. So it's, I think with a game like this, I don't think it would work. I think what would work is maybe having mentor servers with higher level players that are willing to teach a community.
TF2 actually had that where they had like you could start becoming someone's teacher and try and help them learn to play.
Yeah, and like Final Fantasy has a similar system called like the mentor system, which isn't hard to get, but
that's a different route. So that's saying, hey, we're looking for community members who can help newer players rather than the actual game devs stepping in and completely changing the game for everyone in order to try and help new players.
Yeah, because I think with this
I do think like changing the game to that's going to negatively affect the hardcore players while trying to help the newer players is a bad thing overall.
Yeah.
But it does genuinely help newer players get into the game.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that I don't think we have enough ways to do that for these hardcore games where a lot of people are not like me and Yuma, and they're not just going to sit there getting noob stomped on, right?
Yeah.
So the player base for these games can dwindle as like the hardcore players lose interest.
Surely you want more players in as possible, even if it's slightly worse. Like I feel like it's a balance now. Normally, like it's like slightly worse. Like is it much better for like I think the perfect balance is like slightly worse for the hardcore player. Then like much better for the newbie players, like the perfect solution. But obviously, it depends on the game and like what you've implemented to try.
Because but the problem is they have like because they say a good way to learn is duels mode. But what I experienced was even though there's no other new players to play against in duel modes at my level, is the problem of duels mode. So I'm just playing 1v1 against ridiculously good players, which I don't mind because I'm still learning. But it just doesn't feel great to just get destroyed constantly.
Yeah.
It's really bad for your mental.
See, it's a difficult question because I don't think it would work in a game like this because I think you would marginalize a very loyal fan base that have stuck through this game.
Yeah. But I see a lot of like because I went on the MORDHAU Reddit the other day and they were saying like the player base is starting to dwindle. How do we get more players into the game? So I think a lot of the hardcore players they want more people playing this game because they want people to play against.
I think it's good they recognise that.
I think one thing they could potentially do is because I think if they change the combat, it changes the game.
Yeah.
And it doesn't introduce people into like the big open sea. We'll use that as a metaphor. I think the best way would be to have like servers dedicated for new people on low levels that are getting into the game.
Because but then how do you get those new players?
And that's the problem. Is they would have to run.
We need events, right? That's how you normally get. Like,
so, the thing with the Battlefield one was they got a load of players because they released. I think it was around the time they released the Pacific Theater. That was the big thing that happened where it got a load of players to come back into the game, and that's when they changed the time to kill.
They also had a massive marketing push as well.
Yeah.
I think with a game like this, something like a Steam free weekend, where on that weekend you
release a new map or something.
Yeah, and potentially like servers that you have.
Because you want a reason for new players to play with the free game, but you also want a reason for returning players to come back. So you want like a new content for them.
Yeah, and like one of the things I would suggest as well, because I actually sent this to Dave recently that Hell Let Loose just did, was they had top 10 things or like video series. So instead of changing your tutorial system, you actually put like educational things on like a YouTube format that people can visually see and how it works. And you could partner with
there's lots of tutorial systems in like a lot of good games where show you like how you actually use the thing in the game, like as like a little video or a little animation.
You could partner with content creators that are on Twitch or in the community already, and give them an incentive where it's like an exclusive skin specifically made like for them as for help in contributing to bringing a new player base in, that gives them that maybe gives them like this is the guy, if I have questions and I see this guy in this gold armor set, maybe I can ask him and he'll help me out or something like that. Or have a dedicated server on a free weekend, which is they don't turn the time to kill off, but is for new players below level 15 or something like that, to like hone their skills, get the baseline of the game without getting stomped, and then they might go, I actually really enjoyed playing that game when I was doing okay or wasn't getting stomped. Maybe I'll put the time in to learn it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I think it's got a lot of promise, and like I think there's so many
another thing that the devs could do is some sort of really advanced AI that players could play
fills in these games.
Because one of I can't believe I mentioned Chivalry, but I didn't even mention one of my favorite games of all time, another Half-Life 2 mod, Pirates, Vikings, and Knights. That's a fucking amazing medieval first-person sort of combat game. But I wouldn't say it's it's definitely not as serious as like Chivalry or Mordhau, but definitely does have like kicking and hitting and stuff like that.
And my favorite, the barrel.
The barrel on the pirates, One thing they did recently was they had a dwindling player base, so they basically added bots that would fill up all the servers. That play like real players, sort of thing. Which is a really good idea.
That would help a lot. I think noob servers with bots like
I also think I think it would help in terms of because I played on some of the on the bigger servers.
Yeah.
Like when you
there is like 80 players. There's like 40v40 in MORDHAU.
Yeah,
there is like really cool.
Especially when you're attacking something like this castle.
I love defending this castle. That's one of my favorite things to do. Because
you sort of want it to be a swarm.
Where, you get in the trenches and you just there's your teammates' heads flying past you. Like, is this my teammate? Is this my enemy? I'm just swinging.
And then like choke points as well. So like they're attacking this wall. We need to defend.
Guys, if you're not buying MORDHAU right now, this game's fucking epic. It's fucking on it.
Just give it a try.
Because the 40-player servers don't get filled up, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. But imagine like 80 players. I feel it would be epic. And then if you have bots on there that you stand slightly more of a chance against.
Well, wasn't there like? There's like bots. Was it For Honor maybe that did that, where they added like lots of AI bots mixed in with the actual human players,
like a Timefall system,
or Timefall.
Part of the game mechanics.
Did Battlefield? No, sorry, not Battlefield. Did Battlefront do this? Star Wars Battlefront?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's loads of like AI like chump units, right?
Yeah, that stuff's like kind of interesting.
I quite like that. I think it's like it makes like fills out like the theme of like you're going for. without hindering the players necessarily.
Because that's one of the things I really like about Hell Let Loose is you have like 100-player server, and like you essentially you can hold like a town with 2 people, and you have like the last time I played it, it was me, my squad, and another squad holding this town, and we were completely surrounded while our team was trying to attack an objective. They failed miserably. They didn't come back to attack, and they surrounded us. But it was like that sort of like every game you play is like different, and like the strategies that come up with it, like that's the type of thing that I really enjoy. And like imagine this on like 40 on 40, and like you're like, okay, we can't breach this wall. They've got the ballista up. We need to take the ballista down and focus on that. And then you're trying to get up through the bottom and then on the ridge on the side. Like that sort of mindset, I think, is really cool. And would love to see.
Yeah, there's so much more I could say about this game. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Matt. I love having you on. We are an hour and 5 minutes into the Tangerine.
Yeah, maybe we should think about heading.
Yeah, we should think about finishing it. So, what were your thoughts on the Declaration of Independence?
Oh no.
I support it.
Okay. He's pro. Okay.
I'm pro-independence.
Yeah, there's so much more we can talk about. I love to talk about this game. I'd love to have you on to talk about more games we've been playing together, because I feel like me and you, when we start talking, we just got so much cool shit to say.
And I think like whenever we play games together as well, if like especially when we played Space Hulk,
I've been saving footage of Space Hulk for you, Matt, so we can talk about it.
I was gonna say, we can definitely talk about that, because
in an upcoming Tangerine.
Tangerine, Warhammer, Deathwing, Space Hulk.
Yeah, that
teaser
one
for if you made it all the way to the end of the video.
Yeah. Guys, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, smash like, subscribe, push the bell, and all that jazz. That's the end of Tangerine. Check out MORDHAU, and maybe check out Back for Blood once the reviews come out. And we'll see you next time.
Wait on that one.
Don't do it, Matt. Don't do it, Tony, on Cyberpunk. Don't pre-order it. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.